Good evening, good evening, good evening to all of you, my brothers and sisters of Mosby Memorial Baptist Church, and to our entire virtual community. We thank God for you and sharing with us for another tag team talk. You know what that music means. That means it's T3 time. And we've got a wonderful episode lined up for all of you. Let me just give you a reminder of what we do here at Tag Team Talk. T3 is an opportunity to create fruitful dialogue around the issues and the concerns of the day. Our mission is to provide continued hope and care through professional and expert knowledge that engages mind, body, and the soul of our listeners. Our title in our episode tonight is entitled An Ecumenical Conversation Around Racial Justice and Healing. Let me just give a recap of where we are. For the past 8 months, our country has waded through the murky waters of a pandemic, racial unrest, and political turmoil, economic hardships, and health disparities. Concerning racial unrest, what our churches have witnessed and experienced are not new, but the varied incidents in this year alone, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and countless other incidents have caused us to take a deeper look into the systemic issues of racism, patriarchy, heteronormativity, and misogyny. And tonight, we gather to take a look at the important ministerial work being done by the Episcopal Diocese of Virginia and the Ministry on Racial Healing and Justice. Joining me this evening from the St. Phillips Episcopal Church are two wonderful ladies whose work stands out in our community. Carolyn Lanier and the Reverend Forrest. They will share their experience, their wisdom, insights around this important work of racial justice and healing. Let us meet our guest for this evening. I'll start with Carolyn Lanier. Carolyn Lanier earned a bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Michigan and a Master of Public Administration degree from Seattle University. She possesses nearly 30 years of experience in strategic planning, organizational development, and human resources management. Her professional experience was obtained while serving with various government and higher education employers. Her professional work has taken her across the globe. Until recently, she served as the Chief of Staff and Vice President for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Northeast Ohio Medical University, otherwise known as NeoMed. Prior to joining NeoMed, she spent 12 years with Western Connecticut State University, serving as WCSU's Director of Recruitment and Training, and later as the Chief Diversity Officer. Working at the Seattle King County Department of Public Health, Ms. Lanier served as Human Resource Manager for the city, and for the city of Southfield, Michigan, served as a personnel specialist. Ms. Lanier is a member of St. Phillips Episcopal Church here in Richmond, Virginia, where she serves as Register to the Vestry. She also serves as chair of the Ministry on Racial Justice and Healing for the Diocese, Episcopal Diocese of Virginia. Help me in welcoming Miss Carolyn Lanier.
Thank you so much.
Yes. The Reverend Marlene E. Forrest. She is not a stranger to Tag Team Talk. She has been with us before, and we're glad to have her back. Reverend Forrest is the priest in charge at St. Phillips Episcopal Church, north side of Richmond. She obtained her bachelor's degree in special education from Virginia State University and a master's of education in curriculum and instruction from George Mason University. She earned her Master of Divinity from Virginia Theological Seminary. She retired as a special education teacher in 2016 after 30 plus years of teaching a variety of children with special needs to follow her call into ordained ministry. Reverend Marlene has a passion for racial justice in and out of the church. This comes from a deep passion displayed by her maternal grandmother and her paternal grandfather, who each played important roles in matters of race and equity within their communities. In the Episcopal Diocese of Virginia, Reverend Marlene serves on the Commission on Ministry and the Committee on Priesthood, which assists in forming ministers, and is a member of the Ministry for Racial Justice and Healing. Please welcome both Reverend Marlene Forrest and Carolyn Lanier. We are glad to have both of you here with us. And we're going to jump right in because we only have a few minutes, an hour. And so we're going to jump right into this wonderful work that you're doing here in Richmond for the Episcopal Diocese. So, Miss Carolyn, tell us about the work that you're doing around racial justice and healing.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Pastor Davis. It's really a pleasure to be with you this evening. I'm very excited about the work that we're doing in the Episcopal Diocese. For me, much like with Reverend Forrest, this is the work of a lifetime. Although I am new to Virginia, and my work here really started more than a year ago in working on the commemoration of the 400th anniversary of the first enslaved Africans arriving here in colonial Virginia. And it was after that that I got involved. It was through that work that I became more involved with the Episcopal Diocese, because at that same time, the diocese was recognizing the anniversary of that landing. And started doing services of lamentation around the diocese. And they had previously had a committee that really focused more on training and education. There wasn't a lot going on as far as truly working to dismantle systemic racism. And so I reached out to the bishop and really talked with her and looked at what is the diocese vision around truly getting in deep and doing more than just training classes and book clubs. So this ministry has come together with representatives from around our diocese. We're a primarily white denomination and therefore predominantly white ministry. And what we're currently working on is how we can make this commitment of the diocese a lasting commitment, and not just something that is a trend or a fad that lasts for as long as we have a discussion, and we Americans have relatively short attention spans. So it's sort of the next new shiny squirrel that comes by to grab our attention. So we're looking at, how do we do this? How do we look at things such as church growth and church planning? How do we recruit our clergy? Where are we looking for them? How do we train our clergy to lead their congregations in some of these difficult conversations, as well as working with the diocese to recognize the past? You can't move forward if you aren't prepared to look at where you've been, what wrongs have been committed, and admitting to and working towards healing them and righting them and not repeating them. So that's some of the work that we're truly at the beginning of doing. It's been probably mostly since the beginning of this year. Okay. So a little bit more than 8 months. We had a couple of meetings and went right into lockdown. And since then, like everyone else, has been doing an awful lot of Zoom and email and text and things.
Has this been the work on racial justice, healing and justice? Has that leap for a particularly white denomination, has that leap been difficult?
Anytime you're talking about change,
Mm-hmm.
that people can be resistant.
Mm-hmm.
I think what we fall back on is reminding people of our charge, and God's call to us to love one another. I really like something that Reverend Forrest said, and I'm going to quote her in case she doesn't do it later. Don't you want to make sure that you're doing the right thing so that you won't be embarrassed that you're in hell later?
Mm. Mm. Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So Reverend Forrest.
Yes.
So why does this ministry of racial justice and healing, why is this important now?
Well, living in these times that we are living in, this time of, I call it the dual pandemics of COVID-19 and racial injustice. We cannot be complicit in doing the good work that God's calling us to do. And in the Episcopal Church, it goes back to our baptismal covenant, where we are asked when we step forward or stepped forward on behalf to answer a question. Will you strive for justice and peace among all people and respect the dignity of every human being? And our answer is with God's help. And so at this particular time where the country is so divisive over vaccines, over race, over political parties and things like that, it's time for us to take a stand and not sit back and think that this is not happening. I've said this quote to you several times, Pastor, from Dr. Catherine Meeks, that none of us are woke. We are all waking up to the sin of racism. It is a sin. And so we have to do what we know that God is calling us to do, and to, be able to look God in the face and say, God, you know what? I did the best that I could with what you gave me, with the gifts that you gave me, to help my brother and sisters and siblings who are struggling, who feel like they have no voice, who feel like they have no more hope, whose faith is little for the system. And how do we dismantle racism? And how do we being anti-racist? It's not good enough just to not be racist. We have to be anti-racist, where nothing goes anymore.
Reverend Forrest, I'm going to ask. I think we have just a little bit of technical difficulty. I'm going to ask that if you could, that last 20, 30 seconds, if you could just share. I heard theology of anti-racism, I believe.
Right. Just that, it's not good enough anymore to be, to not be racist, that we have to be anti-racist, where nothing goes anymore, where we are saying that we have brothers and sisters in this country, in this world, whose necks are being crushed, and feel like they have no hope, they have no voice, they have no faith, and that it is our responsibility to help lift them up and to do all the work that we can in order for them not to feel that way.
So, and this is for either of you. So, the theology of anti-racism, can for our audience, can you give us a definition of anti-racism, and where does that work begin?
Do you want to take that?
I can take it, and it is the theology of being an anti-racist really goes. If you go back to Carolyn, I'm blanking on his name, Dr. Kende, and he has that book about anti-racism, and it's really looking at the disparities and the inequalities and systems that cause us to think the way that we think about people of color, people of different genders, all kinds of the othering, as Toni Morrison and others. Look at how we're doing that, and how our privilege frames how we see things. And how we take that privilege and the stance that we have, the class that we have, in order to reach back and to equal the playing field, and to really look at yourself and say, where are my biases, and how do I change that? And I think the work and once the whole George Floyd incident happened, people were wondering, well, what can I do? I had so many of my white brothers and sisters calling me and texting me and saying, well, what can we do? What can we do? Or what book can I read? Well, it's wonderful that you're reading a book, but do your own work. Black folks can't do your work for you. Now we can help, we can support you, we can help guide you, but we can't do your work for you. And if it means that you got to read a book, if it means that you've got to go out and protest, if it means that you are writing letters to your congressman and your senator, then that's how that work begins. And looking at yourself, looking in the mirror and saying, am I respecting everybody because they are children, beloved children of God?
I think another thing to add is that not only do white folks have to do
absolutely,
but they have to speak to each other. My co-chair on this committee is Caucasian and male. And it's really important to have the balance between he and I, because there are conversations that he's a part of that I'm not going to be heard in the same way that he is heard. I can tell him some things to share, some ideas, but they're going to come across differently when a white male delivers it to another white male than hearing a Black woman say it.
So we know that in the work of becoming or being or teaching anti-racism, and in particular within the church, that we've seen our white brothers and sisters kind of step to the background, thinking that the work is for Black and brown folks to do. And so I'm interested in knowing how has that been received by the Episcopalian white brothers and sisters for this work that you're doing. How have they received it? What are some of the obstacles that you have run into, and how do you address those?
Well, please be assured the Episcopal Church is a microcosm of society at large. And there are things that we have proposed, such as hiring a staff person to do the work of racial justice. And there's fear that in creating a staff position, that will lead some folks to think, oh, great, the work is done, I don't have to do anything. Well, no, this is somebody who is going to assist you and can help point you in the right direction in terms of resources, but this is not someone who is going to do your work for you. There are things that around doing that work that, yes, there is pushback for. But again, the baptismal covenant, simply building, I think, on people's outrage right now, that's a really important piece. That there's no one who can has viewed the George Floyd video who can deny that we are broken. And when you list the names of people who have died, that it doesn't matter what crime was committed. How can you tell me that a $20 counterfeit bill was worth someone's life? And so there are things where there is common shared ground already that everybody can view something as an outrage, and it's building on that really is where the hard work begins, of getting people to say, oh, okay, I see what you're talking about in this instance,
Mm-hmm.
and using this instance to then take it to, okay, now let's talk about all of the other things, whether it is healthcare, the education system, or employment opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
but everything has to be a building block. And that's where we're at, is putting those kinds of things together and reminding people about those kinds of things. If you can see George Floyd and his murder as a murder, then let's take that next step. Can you see that? How do you think that makes me feel when you value your Confederate statues more than my life?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And everybody is not on board.
No.
You know,
Tell me more about it, Reverend Forrest.
yeah. And to be honest,
not on board.
Yeah, because there are people, and like Carolyn said, the Episcopal Church is a microcosm of our society, and there are people that are saying, "Oh, you're talking too much about race. You're talking about that black stuff again," and so everybody's not on board, and everybody's not ready to tell the truth, to talk about being in this Commonwealth of Virginia. And knowing, being this place where slavery it was, and that there are churches, our churches, Episcopal churches that are built on land that was taken from our indigenous brothers and sisters, built by enslaved people. And so some people are just not ready to let go of that part of their history, or even just to say, let me put that on the shelf for a little while so that I can better understand what is happening now and how there's a connection. So, everybody's just not ready. And that's with anything. People are not always ready to have those conversations and to do that work. And so part of the thing that I believe that we're trying to do with the Ministry on Racial Healing is to almost put up a mirror to folks, so that they can see really what is happening, and to say, you may not agree with this, but look what's happening. These are the things that are happening. These are the incidents that are happening with our George Floyds and our Breonna Taylors, and with our indigenous brothers and sisters, in the Navajo Nation, who are dying by the handful because of COVID-19, and whose land had been stolen, and they have congresswomen and senators who are living in houses with no water, no running water. And so thinking about all of these injustices and shining a light on them, and getting people to really see, to open their eyes, to take that law and really see what is happening in our country and in our world.
So with the work that you all are doing right now in 2020, and with all of the changes that we see really on a daily basis, with the things that I had mentioned at the beginning of this episode, the pandemic, racial unrest, economic downturn, you've got health disparities, and now with the people having their say in making the strong statement that we no longer are going to quote unquote put up with this administration. Has that and those things that I mentioned, have those things had an impact on your strategic plan and how you begin to roll out this ministry of racial healing and justice, and what does that look like, and how are you guys adjusting kind of on the fly with all the things going on? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I know, okay. And Carolyn, you can speak to it too.
Clear.
Yeah, Carolyn can speak to it as well. But some of the things that we have in our strategic plan, we had dates for things, and some things we had to say, you know what, we need to move this back. This needs to happen right now. We can't wait 6 months for this to happen. Some of the truth telling and the healing and making sure that healing is part of worship. Healing within worship is part of how we move forward, and that we put these things in place early enough so that healing and that truth telling and that justice can roll down like water. And that we worked hard on our strategic plan, but it's a living document. And it's a document that's going to be changing as the world changes. And as, we feel that there are things that are more urgent than others. We're in a time of crisis, and all of it is urgent, but having to really look at it strategically and say, well, we need to do this now. Like our staff person, we wanted our staff person on as soon as possible to be working and facilitating this work that we've been called to do. And Carolyn, you can talk more about it, about the plan as well.
Yeah, and one of the things I just to back up for as you asked the question, Pastor Davis, that I also want to say is, don't think that we have wide acceptance of the plan and that it was easy. Even we've got plenty of people who think we're talking about race too much, and this isn't what they come to church for, and it isn't what they want their clergy to talk to them about. And they don't want their resources spent on it. They don't want to have conversation on it, that their life the way they know it is comfortable and good and has worked for them, and they want to continue it. So we're definitely rocking the boat. And that so there's a piece where, yes, we are changing dates as to what we want to be able to do and when we want to be able to do it. But I think our most important thing is to not get distracted, and to not let current events dictate this work. We had these problems before the pandemic. We're going to have them, we hope, not for much longer after the pandemic. That's what we're working to help to eradicate. A light's been shown more on it, and I think that is part of the pandemic, because there is so much going on and people are feeling so much pressure, and they're also at home and they're watching their TVs, and they're feeling that the world is spiraling out of control. So there is that part of it, but these are not new problems that we're working on. This isn't something that just happened.
Absolutely. I'm wondering how many people are on your committee?
There's 10 of us.
Okay.
On the diocese.
And is it made up of?
It is a mix. We're proud to say it is black and white, straight and gay, male and female, clergy and lay. Okay.
All right. Now, one of the things that I'm wondering is, this is work, and I wanted to bring you on, both of you, to talk about what you're doing and what that looks like in the Episcopal Church. What advice would you give to other denominations, other communities of faith that are trying to begin this work? And what would you suggest that they start?
That's a great question.
Whoever wants to.
I would really say that I believe every denomination has people that want to get involved, and people that are feeling they want to do something, that God is calling them, that their heart is leading them to do something. And you need to capitalize on that. As Jesse Jackson used to tell us, I am somebody. So be that somebody who gets things kickstarted, who talks to others, even if it's starting just within Mosby and just in your church. And as you're talking to people, they're going to know people who worship at another church and can start to make those connections. I don't know if you have diocese the way the Episcopal or Catholic Church does, or if you have parishes. But to make those connections.
Yeah. Baptists are independent. And so in the Baptist tradition, and in particular the Black Baptist tradition, there's this idea of priesthood of all believers. So we all, the given Baptist church that we attend, there's foundational principles, but how we choose, or how that particular church chooses to move, as guided by the Spirit of God, that is how they move. And so, yes. So I'm sorry. I just wanted to tell you that no, we don't have a diocese, no ma'am. we have larger Baptist organizations, but not a diocese, no ma'am. Yes.
But what you do have that we have is coffee hour. And after service, people need to be talking about issues, not talking about other people and who did or didn't do whatever. And so I think that in every church, there are people, as I said, who want to get involved, who want to do something, and they need to be talking to each other and thinking about, are we as a church living our mission? And what is our mission? And what is our vision? What is our vision for the future? And if we really are being God's people, what work are we doing, or can we do to move forward to the kingdom? And that's where that starts, and it's all about, what a small group of people can do that eventually changes the world.
I totally agree with what Carolyn said. And, it begins with us as individuals, and what we feel we've discerned that God wants us to do. There's plenty of work in the vineyard. And so if God is calling you to go out and march and to protest about all kinds of issues, then that's what we need to be doing. When I first got to St. Phillips, I've been here since the pandemic. So that's how I spent almost all of my ministry at St. Phillips. But I was out down at the Lee Memorial, protesting and marching and praying. And I had some of my folks say, does she want us to do that too? Well, if God's calling you to do that, then yes, that's what I want you to do. Yeah. But I also want you to be in intentional prayer about what God's calling you to do as far as these issues are concerned. And maybe it's just praying, not just praying. Maybe it's praying. Or maybe it's, like I said, writing letters to your senators and your congressmen and calling people. But, seeing where do you fit in this big puzzle of injustice that's in the world? Where do you fit in to make this world the dream that God's calling it to be? God has so much more in store for us, and we should be excited about what he has in store for us. But we also have to be on mission with God and do the work that God's calling us to do. We are co-creators with God, and this world is that creation. And if we're not doing our part, as we can see what's happening in our world now, then that breaks God's heart. And so, but what do we do in order to not break God's heart and to do what we are truly gifted by God to do? All that we have is a gift. And so what other faith communities can do, we had a book club. We are a Black church in a 90% predominantly white denomination. We had a book club, and we talked about some of the issues that are affecting us, good, bad, and otherwise. We're getting ready to have another book club in January to talk about the caste system, classes, and whatnot. And we have people doing voter registration and they get out to vote, and all kinds of things that churches can do in order to make sure that this world is equitable. It's not going to be equal, because nothing is really equal, but are things equitable and fair? There's, all kinds, and us being in dialogue together, the Baptists and the Episcopalians, who would have ever thought? That's what we do.
I would have never thought.
I completely support what Reverend Forrest is saying, and I would also throw in that for you, Pastor Davis, it's about leadership. And that when the congregation feels supported in this work, or feels that you are standing with them, that they also will stand, because there's always going to be one or two people who will do it on their own. But
Absolutely.
To see the person in the pulpit who is talking about it, but also challenging them to do it, really makes a difference.
So there to begin this work, what I'm hearing is that there needs to be some personal contemplation with the Creator in seeking guidance and direction in how one moves with the Spirit of God. I like, Reverend Forrest, what you said, a theology of co-creation, right? This idea that we are partners with God, and we're moving into a season of Advent where we will be preaching the coming or the birth of Christ, and Christ comes as Emmanuel, right? God with us. And so I think that becomes important for us as we move. And now, is there room for partnership? And let me say this to our viewers. And I see people making comments. If you have a question, you please put it in our comment section. We see the comments that you're making, and if you have a question for our two panelists, please share that, and you can share that right now. But I wanted to ask: is there room for partnership between, say, the Baptist denomination or a Baptist church? And let me just break it down. So is there a partnership between Mosby and St. Phillips in doing this larger work of racial, a ministry of racial healing and justice?
And the answer is yes. So let's do it.
Right.
I'm that kind of person. Let's do it. If there, we know for a fact that here in the greater Richmond area, that there are needs, and if two churches, an Episcopal church and a Baptist church, a female pastor and a male pastor can bring their churches together in order to do this good work, then I say let's do it. And so what it will take is for the two pastors to discern what God's calling us to do corporately, and for our members to say, wait a minute, they're doing it. How are we called? How are we, as a matter of fact, not even how we're called, how are we invited into this work? Because people are waiting for an invitation. They're sitting back, on Zoom on Sundays or whatever platform that you're on, wondering how they can be in this good work that's happening. And they're waiting for somebody to say, you know what? I saw this gift in you. I know you like to write cards to people on their birthdays. Maybe you can get involved in this ministry as we're writing cards to get people out to vote at our local elections. People are waiting for invitations. People are standing on the outside of our so-called churches waiting to be invited into some kind of work because they don't always know what that work is. And so I say, we do it, and if there are other churches that want to get involved as we discern what we're being called to do, then I think it's fabulous. That's what God, it's a Pentecostal moment, when the Holy Spirit, when she comes down, fire baptizing everybody in that mighty rushing wind, and people are talking all kinds of languages and tongues. That's where we are. We're in a Pentecostal moment. And so where do we go with it? What do we do with it? Now that you put it out in the atmosphere, Pastor. And
so Reverend Forrest, that's what I'm learning to love about you, is that you are that one that is like, okay, yes, if this is God ordained, let's do it. I broke it down like that because I wanted, and certainly I would love to have this conversation, right, about how Mosby and St. Phillips works together, but I wanted to find out if another church that might be watching right now is looking to join this ministry, not join it in the sense of being on the committee, but joining in the work. Is that possible? Can a church or an individual from a particular church, not any particular denomination, come and say, Carolyn, how do I become a part of this? Can I be a part of this?
Absolutely. We'd be happy to talk with them about the work that we're doing. And there's going to be pieces perhaps that we're doing that will work for some other church maybe. Some of our work revolves around, we were talking earlier about some of our churches are built on land that was stolen from indigenous people. We're working on that, on how do we divest ourselves from that. That may not be something that another church needs to work on. But we're more than happy to share our experiences, to talk about some of the places where we can work together, where we can partner together. There is more than enough work for everybody.
Gotcha.
And also, Pastor, in the Episcopal Diocese of Virginia, we have 179 churches. And many of those churches are doing all kinds of work. They're doing things like a program called Courageous Conversations, where folks are sitting down and talking about the divisiveness of the political climate right now. We have through the national church, the Episcopal Church, something called Sacred Ground, where people are able to look at all of the systems that are out there, redlining and the VA loans and things like that, in order to see where there have been injustices and to questions about it and do some work around it. There are all kinds of things that the Episcopal Church is doing that we are more than willing to share with other people to do that good work. And all around the diocese, all around the United States, there are Episcopal churches that are doing this good work, and it's a mandate from our presiding bishop, Bishop Michael Curry, who some of you may know as the Royal Wedding preacher.
Yes.
He's our bishop, the first the first African American bishop, presiding bishop in the Episcopal Church. And he, preaches this loving, liberating, life-giving God, where we are all part of the beloved community. And so that doesn't mean just Episcopalians, that means all of us. And so because it means all of us, then we all need to join in this work, because there's plenty of it to do.
Wow. And I love Bishop Curry.
Yeah, he's the man. He's got a new book out.
Yes. So I'm sorry. Love is.
Love is the way.
Love is the way.
Yes.
Absolutely. Love is the way.
Yes.
That is that. And that, I know that is something that I am leaning on and learning, especially in this pandemic, that love is absolutely the way. And it faces you to look into the mirror and to really get down to, okay, what is it that we are trying to do, or what is it that God is saying in this moment? How is it that we come together in such a way to begin to alleviate and eliminate these injustices that we are seeing in our communities? And certainly we even right here, we've got healing to do even right here in Richmond, Virginia. I want to ask a question. There's some questions that we got this afternoon that I wanted to jump into and just kind of get your thoughts about where are we at. We're at 45 minutes. Let me ask this question. And I must, before we go, I must give a shout out. Reverend Forrest's father, Mr. Lewis E. Forrest, Brother Forrest, is on and he is watching. And if you all see, it is Founders Day today, 11/17, for Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. And so I just want to give him a shout out because he is a fraternal brother, and he crossed in 61, New Psi at Virginia State University. And I tried calling, just let him know if he's I hope he's still watching. I tried calling you today, sir. I will keep trying, but I look forward to talking with you. Okay, so let me ask this question. All right. So have you considered Jonathan Daniels, a saint in the Episcopal Church, as an example for dismantling racism? And so I'm not real familiar with Jonathan Daniels, but I know you all can speak to that.
Yeah, I think we can consider him all the time. I know for me, I consider him all the time. He was a seminarian who sacrificed his life to go down to Selma, and a white guy, a white man who was going through seminary to really put his money where his mouth is, something that he didn't have to do. And shielding a Black girl to keep her from being harmed, to keep her from being harmed. We honor him as a martyr and a saint in the Episcopal Church on August 14th. And again, it goes back to our baptismal covenant. And really, do we strive for justice and peace among all people and respect the dignity of every human being? He was the epitome of that. And so, we honor him as we honor all different kinds of saints in our church. And the prayer that we say on his Saint Day, and it says that we pray that we follow his example. May we make no peace with oppression. Make no peace with oppression. And that's oppression of any kind, even oppression of ourselves. We do it. That internalized oppression that we do all kinds of times and ways. And so Jonathan is, a martyr and an example in our church of someone who sacrificed. He is, up there with the John Lewises and the Martin Luther Kings and Desmond Tutu and all these folks who are fighting for justice and realizing that that there's a bigger, grander dream that God has for this world, and we can get there if we do this work with God, on mission with God.
Right. So in the ministry that you are in, the Ministry of Racial Justice and Healing, do you use those examples? And I may have missed this, but do you use those examples within the training, within the committee meetings to help to remember and to focus and center, right, our efforts and our thoughts and the spirit of not making peace, right, with the oppressor or with injustice? Are they used in that way?
We usually start each meeting with having a few minutes of spiritual formation and having that opportunity to get ourselves centered and to leave out the other things that have happened during the days or the weeks since we previously have met, and to get centered on why we're here and the work that we intend to do, over the next 2 hours or whatever the period is. So we do. There's that or other prayers, or sometimes, quite honestly, I think one of the things that we're very proud of within our committee is the bond that has been developed from, all of the diverse backgrounds that we're bringing to this work, and the fact that we are able to speak as one voice. That happened intentionally, but we had to work at making it happen, particularly in a time where we've not been able to meet in person, where we've been meeting electronically. That we have spent time on that and working with the 10 of us, as well as thinking about how do we reach the larger audience.
I think one of the other things that I know for me is remembering that this work of racial justice and healing is part of my spirituality. It's a spiritual practice. It's a spiritual discipline. It's part of my rule of life. There's not a morning that I don't get up that I don't pray for racial justice and healing. And so it becomes part of you. It's ingrained in you. I'm not saying that it hasn't always been ingrained in me, but I just believe that I'm more intentional about how I pray about it now. And that if I'm intentional about how I pray about it, then it is reflected in how I treat other people. It's reflected in how I preach. It's reflected in how I lead my flock. It's reflected in all of my relationships. And so it's a spiritual discipline. It's a spiritual practice to be anti-racist, because Black folks can be racist too. Just to, put it out there. We can be racist amongst our others, and we can be racist against other races. And so to really be anti-racist and to make it part of your spiritual practice, your rule of life. I know that's for me. And I think being in this group of 10 diverse people, it has really made me become more intentional about how I live that out in my life.
That's good. That's good. That's good. We have a few minutes left. As we were talking about Jonathan Daniels, the one of our associate ministers, who's part of the Tag Team Talk team. He shared that he was in Selma 2 years ago, marching in Hineville, Alabama, in his honor. And so the work that I know Minister Ivy has done and is doing is a work also of passion. And Reverend Forrest, you are absolutely right. That I think that is something, it needs to be a part of you, right? And in a sense that walking with God on a daily basis. Carolyn, we may not have a meeting for 2 more weeks, but I need to be doing the work, right? Internally as well as externally. And we had a question, Eudora, for us. She said, do we embrace our responsibilities and I think she meant to say to reach each other as sisters and brothers, needing to be educated about ourselves and our place in this world. Do we embrace so I'm not sure if there's more of a question or more of a comment about us needing to embrace our own responsibilities so even though I may not be a part of the committee or may not be a part of a particular community of faith, the work still needs to go on, right? It is my responsibility as an individual human being to make sure that I am making this world a better place. So,
yeah. That's my mama who put that there. And so,
okay. Hey, mama.
And those, hi, Mom. But those are conversations that I have with my family. We talk about these kind of things, and that you're sitting at the dinner table or at the Zoom table, and you're educating your children about the things that have happened and how we got over, how we got to the promise, and having those conversations and educating your own self, so that you're not going out and saying things and doing things that are offensive. And that's one of the things that I've had to share with some of my white brothers and sisters and siblings, that I don't know whether you realize it, but you said such and such and so, and you may not realize it, but that was offensive. And so we do have a responsibility to call some things out, with others and with ourselves. And to, as my mother said, to educate ourselves about what is going on in the world, because a lot of us don't know. A lot of us may not know about Jonathan Daniels. A lot of us may not know about the work that Ruby Sales, what happened with Ruby Sales, and really, if you quote from Martin Luther King and you think you woke, no, we have a responsibility to educate ourselves and to educate our children.
I like what you said at the beginning, where we are not woke, we are waking up.
Yes.
Was that correct?
Yes.
We are waking up.
Yes.
Say that again, Reverend Forrest.
That came from Dr. Catherine Meeks, who is the
Absalom Jones.
Yeah, she's the director of the Absalom Jones Center for Racial Justice and Healing in Atlanta, Georgia. And she talks about that all the time. None of us are woke. We can think we woke, we know everything. We that shirt I saw, we blackity black. Well, we may be, but we don't know everything. We're waking up. Every day I'm learning something new about what's going on in the world. Oh, I didn't know that happened. I didn't know so it's part of that, educating ourselves so that we can continue to wake up every day. Just like we're born again every day, we wake up every day more and more.
I love the question of, what did I do to make the world a better place today? Because part of that waking up sometimes keeps me awake at night. That I worry about the things that I can't control. And you try to be better about that, and about, as we say, let go and let God, but it's hard. I'm human. But if I can take time to lay there and count my blessings instead of counting sheep, and to think about what did I do today that helped make this problem smaller or disappear even, that helps, and that is a part for me of my spiritual growth, that I have to practice it every time I start to fall by the wayside.
Well, we have had a wonderful conversation. Carolyn Lanier, she summed it all up. What are you doing? What are we doing each and every day to make sure that we're making the world a better place to live in? And we all are in the place of waking up. And so I want to thank my guests, Carolyn Lanier.
Thank you.
And the Reverend Marlene Forrest for joining me.
Thank you.
For being a part of this fruitful conversation. I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface. And I feel like there's room for us to come back to this space. So I hope that you all are willing to do that for next time.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules and being part of this conversation that is so important around the ministry on racial healing and justice. To my Mosby people, To the virtual community, thank you for joining us. To the St. Phillips Episcopal Church, thank you for joining us. Those of you who thought it not robbery to come on and have a conversation and join us, we thank you. And so I look forward to the next conversation, Reverend Forrest, you and I talking about how do we bring Mosby and St. Philip together. That is exciting to me.
Yes.
And so, the opportunity for that, I'm excited. And so I look forward to you and I engaging in that conversation.
Absolutely.
So, to everyone, have a wonderful evening. May God bless you. And may your rest of the week be peaceful and productive. And we'll see you here next time. You all take care. Peace, love, and happiness to everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.